Why you breaking free from narcissistic abuse fails so far. Welcome to today's topic, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Coach Tobiasforst, founder of Achilleslifecoaching, decade-long recipient of narcissistic abuse, and I've saved myself from it. And I will support you on your journey to your personal freedom. So you might be in a position right now where you think, why can't I get rid of these people? Why can't I seem to break out from narcissistic abuse, be that family or relationship or circle of friends or all of the above? Because even though you've been discarded a few times and you have separated from narcissistic partners in your past, it always seems to be on rinse repeat every single time. Only the faces change, but the love bombing, the devaluation and the discard always are the same. So this video is for you today if you find yourself in such a train of thought. Now to the structure and outline of today's video. We will go through 5 different topics. Number 1, questions to yourself. Number 2, challenges to yourself. Number 3, your precursor, your role model. Number 4, the Holy Grail, Odysseus, Horus, the Phoenix and the Dragon. Point number 5, your courage and your future. So let's dive right into it, ladies and gents. Number 1, questions to yourself. What are you avoiding? What are you repressing? What do you fear? Which traumas from the past have you still not faced? Do you wish to be loved by everybody? Are you in constant search for flat-out harmony from everyone around you? Do you feel unworthy? Is there PTSD in your weighing on your mind? What are you willingly blind towards? The silent treatment, and you come to accept that it's normal? That she just doesn't communicate with you 3, 4, 5 days each time you've had an argument, and there are lots of them. Or his clearly implausible explanations as to his whereabouts. You've come to accept that he's just not that clear of a communicator. What do you feel deep within your heart that you can change about yourself, that you must change about yourself, what you have to forge yourself into? Point number 2, a set of challenges to yourself. Face your demons, within and without. Face your own shadow, that which is unpleasant, that which is hurtful, in and about yourself. Face the cold, hard truth. Embrace reality for the first time. Do you have the courage for this? Are you fed up with the status quo? Then point number 3 might be right down your alley. Your precursor, your role model. We will talk about the character Captain John Sheridan and his enigmatic mentor, Ambassador Kosh, from the series Babylon 5 that ran from 1993 to 1998. In particular today, about a part of one episode, episode number 22 from season 3, which was labeled Zahadum, the name of a planet, with the phonetic version of doom, as in fate inside, just as in Lord of the Rings, Mount Doom, Mount Fate basically, a decision, a point of deciding, used as its name. The German term for this same episode is a bit more fitting and has a bit more to do with why I'm trying to convey this particular part of this series, this episode, to you, and what it has to do with your attempt to break out from narcissistic abuse. This episode was named Alleingang, solo effort, which is much more fitting in my opinion. So to give you a bit of background and motivation about these characters, Captain John Sheridan finds himself in a galactic conflict between two superpowers, the Vorlons on the one side and the Shadows on the other. And his enigmatic mentor, among one of the species of the Vorlons, Ambassador Kosh, gives him advice every once in a while. And John Sheridan is tasked with the almost impossible quest of uniting all the peoples, the different races, to fight against that common enemy called the Shadows. Because all of these peoples, these races, suffer from that big galactic conflict, especially from the subterfuge and the underhanded manipulations from the faction that is named the Shadows. Now there are a few problems for Captain Sheridan. His efforts are not sufficient. The progress is too slow and too little. He is caught in too many of his own old behavioral patterns. He's surrounded by at least some of his allies are in a way, or at a certain point, cowards who lack the courage to embrace the actions needed to change the status quo. And last but not least about John Sheridan, self-doubt. But he realizes that the status quo is unacceptable. Things need to change. He has to change things, and he himself has to change. Now, prior to this episode, there was a discussion between Ambassador Kosh and John Sheridan. And John Sheridan tells his mentor about his plan to go to Zahadum, the home planet of the Shadows. And the advice that Ambassador Kosh gives is the following: you can go to Zahadum, but you will die. As a viewer, you're baffled, the same as Captain John Sheridan, and Sheridan reacts in a sort of a mildly angry way and thinks that his mentor doesn't support him in this decision. And he tells his mentor, well, if you choose not to come, I will go at it alone. Solo effort, as the German translation of this episode would be. That's why it's more fitting. And Ambassador Kosh just tells him, you do not understand, but you will understand. As will you, ladies and gentlemen, what all of this has to do with you and why we are talking about a precursor, a role model for you. Between this interaction of these two characters and the part of episode number 22 called Zahadum, or Solo Effort, that we will discuss later in this video or in a few moments, Ambassador Kosh decides of his own accord, to break with the status quo, to commit an action that will be in favor of Captain Sheridan, in the sense that it breaks the status quo and gives hope to the peoples should they unite. Full well knowing that he himself, Ambassador Kosh, will pay with his life. So later on, John Sheridan's decision to go to Zahadum without Ambassador Kosh wasn't really him not wanting to join, but simply being unable to. So John Sheridan realizes that things can only change with an action that cannot be not seen, not perceived. A very overt, direct action filled with, packaged with consequences. All the while, at the same time, his own personal radical transformation, Latin radix, the root, a change at his close to the very core. So he decides to go to Sahadum, full well knowing what the prophecy, the advice of Ambassador Kosh was. Now he goes there with his ship of the White Star class, a very conscious choice of name, White Star. We will come to that later. And he parks his ship cloaked in the orbit of Sahadum, the home planet of the shadows, and travels down by shuttle. There he finds himself at a negotiation table. It's more of an extortion that he should join the shadows, and by doing so he full well knows that he would basically betray all his own beliefs, his friends, and his current allies and future allies as well. At the table, he finds himself facing manipulators, sadists, liars, enemies of life, and Anna Sheridan, his believed to be dead wife. She is now in a state where she has been irreparably corrupted and conditioned by the shadows. She's basically just a walking, talking hull who promises her husband love and a future together. John Sheridan now has a realization. He could submit, he could allow himself to be gaslighted, manipulated, prodded along, or he could stand up and fight. And he fervently chooses the latter. We skip to a scene where he reaches sort of the end of a line in the form of a balcony with no way out but down. He's already bruised and battered from a fight that ensued after his decision to fight all these people at the table. And he still came away with his life. And he's being confronted with words by an approaching Anna Sheridan, promising love in the future, accompanied and flanked by two of the insectoid shadows right behind her. And he orders his cloaked autopiloted White Star to arm the nukes aboard the ship and travel to his current location at full speed. What he sees outside the balcony is the following. It's a metropolis of the shadows. Beneath a large metal and glass dome, and right beneath the balcony, there is just a dark black chasm, a maw where you see no ground where it ends. It's just a gaping hole in the earth. It doesn't really, as the viewer, you know that it doesn't really fit the landscape, that this would be more or less at the center of this metropolis of the enemy. But subconsciously already realize that this, of course, it has to be right there. It has to be right at this point, when he's with his back to the wall or the back to the balcony railing. We will come to that later. And he stands there, White Star approaching, breaking the glass dome. The clock's ticking, Anna's coming closer, the shadows approach him. and he hears the voice of his dead mentor in his mind, telling him, jump. Jump now. And he does. The White Star approaches the center of the city, the metropolis, and Sheridan screams in helpless rage, and the nukes aboard the White Star explode, leveling the entirety of the city, while John Sheridan is no longer there because he already has reached the bottom of the chasm. So you might ask yourself right now, what in the blazes does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with you at any point? We will explain in point number 4 and 5 of this video, following right after. So let's go to point number 4. The Holy Grail, Odysseus, Horus, the Phoenix, and the Dragon. Quote, you can go to Zardum, but you will die. Unquote. The second quote, you do not understand, but you will understand. Unquote. What does all of this story have to do with narcissistic abuse? Well, it glimpsed through at a few points, and your personal situation and all the aspects named, listed at this point number 4. Let's go through them one by one. The Holy Grail. The Holy Grail, a metaphorical search for the self, for the divine spark within yourself, for the version you could truly become. And when the Knights of the Round Table decided to look for this ominous Holy Grail, each and every one of them started looking for it at the place that seemed darkest to them. That might be the cellar and catacombs underneath the castle. It might have been the dank and foreboding forest out there, or even foreign lands. They started looking for them, for the Grail, where individually it was the darkest place that they could fathom. One more thing before we go to the Grail, or continue about the Grail. Knowing that you can go to Zardum, but you will die. Why didn't he opt to stay with Anna Sheridan and the Shadows? Because he knew they wouldn't have killed him. They would have done something that might seem very familiar to you, ladies and gentlemen. He knew that staying with them would mean that they would make him one of them. They would condition him until he would have adopted their behaviors, traits, and values. So where did John Sheridan look for his Grail, for his version that he must become? In the chasm below, in the abyss, in the darkness, right there on Zardum, the home planet of literally a race that is called what Carl Jung coined the Shadow. Odysseus with his travels, the Odyssey, the stations he had to go through in order to reach his wife, Penelope, and reunite with her after years. And these stations were lessons. They were lessons to go through one by one in an order that made sense. Things he was previously improficient at. Things he had to learn. Things he must not repeat and repeat and repeat until he learns them, but face them, brace them, learn and finish the exam, and rinse repeat with every single station, until such a time where he reached Ithaca, his home, unkempt, scruffy beard, looked like a hobo. No more ship, no more crew, but filled to the brim with new skills. Unrecognized by everyone until such a moment as to when he showed his wife, who was unaware of his true identity, and all the suitors that tried to gain Penelope's favor, that he in fact was one of the few who was able to use the Eurytos bow, fire that arrow through those openings in the axis, in these small hatchets or axes, and hit the target right there behind it, proving to all that this in fact is Odysseus. This is the guy, stripped of everything that looked like Odysseus. Instead, he was now Odysseus, the Odysseus he had to become, that he had to make himself by losing crew, losing people, losing the ship, the clothing, the regalia, the proofs of position and power, while accumulating knowledge and experience, by going through the process of becoming Odysseus. Captain John Sheridan is the modern Odysseus. And this is for you now to become your own Odysseus. More on that later in point number 5. Horus, the Egyptian god with the face of a falcon. He sees things from a higher perspective, more clearly, more context. And he was in a position where he had the choice of confronting his malevolent uncle Seth, or Sutash, who dismembered his father Osiris, Horus's father Osiris, Seth's own brother, and plunged the country into chaos. Horus was faced with a choice: confront the uncle or not do anything, chill out, if you will, in a system of oppression and chaos and destruction. And he faced his uncle, and he succeeded in banishing him. But it came at a cost. Sutash, Seth, tore out his eye, what is known to be the eye of Horus. Attention. He had to sacrifice something. His decision, Horus's decision, came with a sacrifice. The phoenix at some point of aging and becoming slow and losing color, vibrancy, light, fire, chooses to burn itself to ashes, to cinder. This would be it, wouldn't it? That's that. Unless a phoenix is more than that. There must be an essence remaining in this mythological comparison that wills itself to recreate itself anew and more vital, more focused, more determined, more colorful than before. Until such a time when a phoenix reaches a status quo that is no longer acceptable, and it burns itself down to its very core and essence, and it reforms itself again. This was the decision of John Sheridan. He knew he had to burn out the connections with the liars, sadists, and manipulators at the table on the shadow homeworld of Zahadum. He had to burn away the connection to his indoctrinated wife, Anna Sheridan. He had to re-qualify, re-evaluate reevaluate the connections that he previously had, his own attitudes, his own mindsets, his own modus operandi in various ways. And he had to jump now. He needed to burn all of that to his own very essence. And at the beginning of season 4, episode 1, that is exactly what revitalizes him. With a more vital, more focused, more determined, more colorful Captain John Sheridan emerging. Last but not least, at point number 4, the dragon. The dragon, the unpleasant thing about you, ladies and gentlemen, the things that you avoid about yourself, that are deeply rooted within, and you have to confront them. You have to confront your own dragon. And where do you confront it? It's not in your own castle. It's not out on the plains or in the neighboring village. It's in the very cave of the dragon. You have to confront it on its home turf. You have no advantage apart from your sheer determination and heart. And you have to face this apparently uber powerful enemy all on your own, where it lives. The place that's darkest, that's the cave of the dragon. That is where you have to face yourself, everything that you don't like about yourself, everything you've not been paying attention to, that you've ignored, that you've told yourself that it shouldn't be, or it isn't that much of a consequence, although you feel the consequences of ignoring it each and every day. You have to face it right there. As did John Sheridan. He faced his own dragon on Zahadum, and then his own shadow, his darkness, by jumping into that metaphorical chasm. That's why, for the viewer, it makes sense that the chasm is there, although geographically it doesn't. So, point number 5, ladies and gentlemen, your courage, your future. We will start by going through the questions at point number 1, questions to yourself. One last time. What are you avoiding? What are you repressing? What are you afraid of? Which traumas have you still not yet faced? And what do you feel deep within your heart that you can change about yourself, that you have to change about yourself? What do you have to forge yourself into? What is your personal Zahadum to which you will need to fly and metaphorically die to become who you were meant to be, to become who you have to be in order for things to change? What's the name of your personal dragon that you need to confront in its lair, in its cave, that you have to face and defeat on your own, in your own solo effort? Because nobody else can do this for you. Nobody else can go to your Zahadum. You have to take the trip yourself. What quests, what tasks do you have to master on your own Odysseus journey? And yes, I'm aware of the fact that it's called an Odyssey or the Odyssey. But as we detailed all the aspects about Odysseus previously, it's really the Odysseus journey because it is very personal. What are your stations, your aspects, your things that you need to learn to go through your personal transformation? What are they? Write them down. Make a conscious effort to learn about yourself. What is it that you still don't understand what you must learn in order for things to change, for you to change things. Which characteristics and people do you have to cut off on your Odysseus journey in order to become the king or queen of your own Ithaca or your own life, your own kingdom? Which are they? Who has to go? What about you has to go? What do you have? What parts of the cocoon do you have to shed in order to fly? What do you have to shed in order to free your true essence? The search for the Holy Grail. Where will you start searching for yourself? What's your John Sheridan chasm that you have to jump into? What's the place that seems darkest to you to start your search? And it won't be pleasant. But not facing that search is simply not an option, because you've avoided it probably to this very day. There's a reason why you're still watching, because something tells you that this makes sense, what this guy is telling you. After you've shed everything, after you've shed everything that is burdensome, shed everybody, cut off everybody that's burdensome to you, after you've burned off these connections to such people, after you've burned off attitudes, mindsets, behaviors, belief systems, values within yourself that are burdensome and burdening to you, what is it that you will rise as? What will your now freed essence make and create of your own self? What will re-emerge? How will your phoenix, how will you as a phoenix look like? I've listened to this voice, jump now, many times. For a few years now. Every time I've reached a status quo that proved to be unacceptable, be that due to factors without or within. Each and every day I'm reevaluating and burning off what's burdensome. And recreating. If I let go of who I am, I become what I may be. Lao Tzu. What is it about you that you have to let go of in order to become who you are? What you might be. I've searched in my own chasm for myself. And I found it each and every time. And here's the kicker, ladies and gentlemen. There is no if. There is always an always. You always find yourself down there. You always do. There is no if. There's always an always. The only if comes at the step prior to this. Prior to your plunge. Whether you take the leap of faith or you don't. That is the only if. And if you take that step, if you face your dragon, if you burn down as this phoenix, if you start searching for your holy grail, if you unburden yourself of everything that Odysseus did and learn everything he had to learn, if you face your own personal Seth or Sutash and are willing to make the sacrifice, then there is always the self, your self, that you will find each and every time. Your ship, John Sheridan's ship, a white star, it brings the light of insight, the light of knowledge. And once that realization blooms, it levels everything that is in your way. It cuts the relationships to an Anna Sheridan. It helps you cut the relationship to an Anna Sheridan. Or if you're a woman watching this, to your, let's call him a Thomas Sheridan, whoever. Whoever he is, she is, whoever they are, doesn't matter. That's the effect of your own white star. While you are taking that plunge into that lair of the dragon, into that darkness that you've avoided for so long, realizing that it is you that has to change, and it is you that can change, because they cannot, they won't, they don't want to change the system, the dynamics, nothing. They want to keep you there, and don't you dare change. But you're not just someone that chooses to stay there. You are your own John Sheridan, your own hero, your own heroine. You face that quest. You brace those challenges. Because to your personal Zahadum, it's your solo effort, and your solo effort alone that can take you there. Nobody else can do that for you. It always entails making sacrifices. You cannot just cherry pick that you're uncomfortable with the status quo and you want to have this and not have that and get rid of this and that, but you actively choose to not make the sacrifice. If you don't make the sacrifice, and there is always at least one sacrifice that you have to make, if you don't make it, nothing will change. And that, in all honesty, ladies and gentlemen, robs you of any right to complain. If you don't make the sacrifice, don't you dare complain. Does that mean you have to end a business with these two? That's the binary choice if you want to get rid of them. I did. Other people did. And you can too. Does it mean that you have to give up the house that you live in? That the time with your children will be less than before? It won't work without that sacrifice. Especially when it comes to the children. Do you want to see them every day and have them see you every day while you're being bombarded in front of them with invalidations each and every time from toxic mommy or toxic daddy? Or do you want to become who you are and offering your children support and an open ear and mentorship and being a good father, being a good mother each and every time you see them? This is the binary choice. This is where you have to send your white star with the payload and have it level that city of the shadows while you take the plunge into that abyss searching for yourself. Are you ready for that? Then all that remains to say at this point, ladies and gentlemen, is jump. Jump now.